I would like you to know about 3 types of plants. Bryophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. And I'll try and keep it as simple as I can without forgetting some essential stuff. Examples of bryophytes, well, the classic example is moss. That's a bryophyte. Now, do moss have flowers? No, they don't. More on that later. Gymnosperms, some classic examples of gymnosperms include things like pine trees, spruce trees, and such. And of course, angiosperms. All kinds of examples there. Marigolds, tulips, tomatoes, cucumbers, pumpkins, all those are angiosperms. All right. Now here's the general big picture here. Bryophytes have a relatively simple and inefficient way to do sexual reproduction, and I'll explain. Bryophytes have sex, but not in a very efficient way. Gymnosperms have a more evolved way to have sex. And then angiosperms have the most evolved way to have sex. Okay? Other things that you just might want to file away here. Bryophytes have no vascular tissue. It means they don't have a circulatory system like you and I do. And I'll explain again what the significance of that is. Gymnosperms do. Gymnosperms actually do have xylem and phloem. Probably heard that. And so do angiosperms. Last things, then I'll start explaining. Gymnosperms typically have these structures known as combs. And what do angiosperms have? What are their reproductive structures known as? Mr. Waltz? No. Flowers. Okay, there's the bare bones. Now some explanation. Here's some bryophytes. Up close, here are the cells of a bryophyte. Water. Let's say this cell right here needs some water. Here's a whole bunch of water. You know, where do you find moss usually? You know, in the crotch of a tree, on a wet log, on top of a roof somewhere that hardly ever gets any sun. standing water. You don't see moss in the middle of the desert, do you? Or on a dry lawn or anything. I got a whole bunch of moss behind my house, on the north side of my house. It's because I was getting sun back there. Why? Well, because there's a lot of water. This is how water moves through moss. It goes cell by cell. Oops. And so on and so forth. If your moss gets too big, the chance that this cell right here gets water through simple diffusion is very low. That's why you don't see moss, 2 feet tall. Typically, moss is only a couple centimeters tall, isn't it? That's because there isn't any vascular tissue. It just goes cell by cell, slowly but surely. The water just gets absorbed, and usually there's a limit to how high the water can go. Now, gymnosperms are a little bit different. They've got vascular system known as xylem and phloem, little veins. You've all seen these on leaves and stuff. And water, they actually have a vascular system of roots too, don't they? Here's the roots. Since they have a vascular system, the roots and the xylem and phloem bring water all over that tree. So do angiosperms. All right? So because gymnosperms and angiosperms have this vascular system known as xylem and phloem, water can go, look at these trees out here. Water can go from the roots to 100 feet up the tree. And you certainly understand that you don't have moss that big, primarily because moss do not have a way to move water through their organisms. All right? So I guess the bottom line is, the reason why gymnosperms and angiosperms could get so big is because they have a vascular system, isn't it? All right? Moss is a real simple type of plant. It's been on Earth for a very, very long time. Over time, bryophytes evolved into gymnosperms, and one of the big advantages is this xylem and phloem way to move stuff around, not just water, but food and everything. All right. Same with angiosperms. Now, what we want to focus on today, though, is sexual reproduction. Let's say that this is a male, this is the male part of a moss organism, and here's some little haploid gametes, and here's the female. Let's draw another moss plant over here somewhere. Let's say the female reproductive structure happens to be way the heck over here somewhere. Here's the sperm cells. How are these sperm cells going to get over here? Yeah. Nope. No. Yeah?
The water?
Yeah, they have to float over there, Mr. Rebone. That's why these things need to be in a lot of water. What's going to end up happening is they're called spores. They float. And hopefully, eventually, boom, they float all the way over to the female reproductive structure, and yeehaw, sex. Okay? But just imagine, let's say that senna is a moss plant, and rhindrus is a moss plant. Senna really wants the moss plant. What are the chances of the moss plant having sexual reproduction with a moss plant that's 15 yards away? High or low chance?
Low.
Very low chance. The only way that any sperm cell is going to get all the way over there is if there's enough water for it to float and by chance land on the female part of the moss plant that's 15 yards away. Okay? So, as far as sexual reproduction, bryophytes